Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. It's another rainy day in Buffalo. God, I'm getting sick of this crap. Russ and I have a few things to talk about pre-show before we talk about Game 2 of the Western Conference Final and the upcoming Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Final. I heard that, and you cut it off right away. There you go. Yeah, there you go. quick draw McGraw there.
Yeah.
And we'll take some questions in the chat at the end of the show. But, Russ, you have something pre-show?
Yes, I wanted to mention today, pay homage to an former NFL quarterback now that I once interviewed right after the draft. He was a first-round pick, a failed first-round pick of the Buffalo Bills, who have had many. I want to just say goodbye to E.J. Emanuel.
Oh, E.J. Manuel.
Sorry.
Yes, but I have to say he's still better than Geno Smith.
Geno Smith is still in the league for what
it doesn't matter. At least EJ Manuel started a number of games. Geno Smith was just bad. He was worse. It was a bad year for quarterbacks, and EJ Manuel was the best of a bad lot.
I mean, we could argue about who's worse all day, the Jets or the Bills. It would be a whole show.
Yeah, let's not go there. No, I didn't have any pre-show, but then I was changing the channel and turned on your favorite network. Yes. And it was the 23rd anniversary of a particular event. And I know that say Boston fans back in the day when Ray Bork won a championship with the Colorado Avalanche, they were happy for him.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know, as a New York Met fan, were you happy that Dwight Gooden pitched a no-hitter for the Yankees?
There's somebody in the room here that's shaking their head no. I'll be honest, I was not. I was not happy for Darryl Strawberry getting a cheapened ring with the Yankees. I was not happy with any of it. But it's happened. See, and this is the reason why. It has nothing to do with Dwight Gooden. Obviously, I like Dwight Gooden a lot. I've interviewed him for books. I think he's a good guy. The problem is that all ex-Mets, when they went to the Yankees, won. Cohen, Gooden, Strawberry. So you have that factor. And that's, that's what hurts a little. But then all ex-Met pitchers, great ones, went elsewhere to pitch no-hitters for a while. Seaver, Gooden.
Yes.
I think Kuzma got close, but he didn't get one. So, so that kind of stuff, hurt.
Yeah, and the shining moment for Darryl Strawberry was not a home run with the Yankees. It was when he beat the crap out of a future Met in Armando Benitez, when Benitez was a pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles, because he beaned, I think it was Tino Martinez in the back.
That I was in favor of, because I was Benitez. So it's fine.
Yes, just next to Armando Benitez on his baseball card, just put a gas can, and that's a good illustration of what that guy was as a pitcher. Anyway, let's get started. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, May 14th, 2019.
I'm Russ Cohen. We do want to say rest in peace, Tim Conway, because I got to tell you, growing up, he was on everything, right? Carol Burnett, so many things, and just so talented. You could watch him, and he was just funny. They did something once. I know this isn't hockey, but it just came to me. They did a live special once of Carol Burnett, and you have to be our age to even know what happened. And it was like from Australia or something. And he did this bit with Tim Conway where he literally walked down it seemed like 50 or 100 steps, and just to get to the stage because he was in some massive place. It was really funny.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. And I have to say this because I didn't hear about that, but as the resident Grim Reaper, you're the one who always lets us know about that. And I have to say that, over the last few weeks, as I usually go through YouTube and will click on something, and then it'll just lead me to continue to click on different things on YouTube. There was some blooper thing, and then all of a sudden there was a Carol Burnett blooper. And the funniest thing one of the funniest things I've ever seen was Tim Conway just playing some dumb guy as Carol Burnett as Eunice and Vicki Lawrence as Mama.
Yeah.
And Dick Van Dyke was on this thing. And this is the infamous blooper where Tim Conway keeps going on about elephants and this thing. He's making everybody crack up. and Vicki Lawrence says an expletive, like basically waiting for, like, is this, what, going to stop? Yeah. And everybody bursts out laughing. Dick Van Dyke falls off the couch. Tim Conway collapses and laughs. It's hilarious. I'm not doing it justice. Go and search it. It's unbelievable. And honestly, it's like there's not stuff on TV like that anymore. Really,
no, sure. I mean, even like a guy like Adam Sandler couldn't match Tim Conway. You know what it is? It's like Tim Conway, Bob Newhart. These guys were very subtle in the comedy, and it was just like sometimes you didn't get it that second, and it might have taken like an extra second after to get it. But when you did get it, you're like, oh wow, that was good.
And everybody always like, oh, like in a comedic situation, you have to play it straight. He Korman, the guy could not stop laughing at Tim Conway.
He was great. He was the worst and the best straight man at the same time.
he couldn't stop. Anyway, okay, let's get to the hockey. Last night, the game 2 of the Blues Sharks, and as I mentioned when we were talking about it yesterday, Russ, I'm pretty sure in game 2 they lost to Vegas. In game 2 they lost to Colorado, and I was expecting the Blues to sort of come back and the Sharks to maybe not have the same level of intensity that they did in the game 1 game in San Jose. And that was basically what happened. I mean, they did come back from down 2-0, and it was the Logan Couture show, scoring a couple goals. I mean, he's just been incredible. But in the end, it was a 4-2 victory for the Blues. They evened the series 1-1 going back to St. Louis. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, Logan Couture is a monster. He just is. But it's funny because when Binnington gave up, the shorty and the other goal, I get these texts, oh, he's playing small, and it's like everybody just looks or is waiting for this Jordan Binnington ride to end. It's not the same as, the Hamburglar. I forget his real name now.
Andrew Hammond.
It's different than that.
Yeah, it's not Steve Penny. It's not Blaine Locker.
No, he's been good for a while. It's just he didn't have a place. And now that he has a place, you could see that, and he still made big saves in that game. He wasn't the reason they won. The reason, honestly, I think the reason they won was Jaden Schwartz's goal sort of reignited the team. It seems like when he's like their version of Couture. Yeah. It seems like when he scores, then everybody realizes, hey, you know what? It's possible. Because right now, Tarasenko's not scoring, right?
Yeah, he must be hurt.
He must be, because he's not a factor at the moment. But I will tell you, and it's the most amazing thing. Every game, Barbashev gets closer, and he still can't buy a goal. Like sometimes it's what happens, but he was still playing really well. And as a fourth line, it's an effective line. But, Bouwmeester, other than the one turnover, had a pretty good game. I'll tell you what a monster game was Parayko. Parayko had a monster game. Like you just couldn't get the puck from him. He was just in everybody's way all night.
Yeah, and I think he made up for some of the giveaways that he had in game 1. I'll tell you though, and I noticed it, but then when Justin Bourne tweeted it on Twitter last night during the game, I really paid more attention to it. Erik Karlsson is, I mean, everybody knows he's playing hurt, but how hurt he is, I mean, Bourne observed that like he was barely taking a couple strides. That it was really tough for him to move. And I know I mentioned yesterday, they targeted him in game 1. They didn't do it as much yesterday, but they targeted him in game 1, and it may have taken a toll because, Karlsson, he's not invisible, but he was barely noticeable at times in that game last night.
Yeah, I think with Karlsson, they targeted him early in the series, and if he was already banged up, they probably made it a little worse. He's still skating fairly well, better than most, and still the stick and puck is there, but the whole game is not. And so I feel like that's a big loss for them. I think Burns' game fell off a bit last night. I even think Thornton's game has tailed off lately. They got a rise out of Joe Pavelski getting back in there, right? And they got an initial charge. Mm-hmm. Even he has not been that good. At least in that game last night, he wasn't. And so I think a lot of things are sort of crash landed with the Sharks. I think, the euphoria of having Reggie Jackson open up the door has fallen flat. And
so are you going to be as critical when the Blues wheel out John Tudor for Game 3.
Yeah, I said it could be Todd Worrell, John Tudor, Gary Templeton,
Terry Pendleton.
Terry Pendleton would be worse. Yeah, it could be any of those guys.
Ken Daly. Look at us go through all these ex.
Is he still alive? I don't know.
I don't know. He must be doing testing someplace because he is the White Rat. Now, yeah. So I mean, Game 3 going back to St. Louis. Again, I think the series is going long, so I think more than likely we're going to get a split in St. Louis, and then we'll go game 5, Game 6, and I mean who knows what end up. I picked San Jose and I think 7, so I'm going to stick with that. But
it's definitely going 6 or 7 for sure. Like we all saw it coming. This is the one series where it definitely will do that. I don't think there's any question about it. Right now, I think the interesting thing is even 10 years ago, teams, if they came back and had a miracle comeback, like they were down 0-3 and then came back, like the Guelph Storm did that in the OHL, right? If that happens in the NHL now, everybody starts writing about it, talking about it, saying it's impossible, almost from the get-go, right? And we're doing that too with the next series that we'll talk about. But it's the coverage of it game to game now is just so under a microscope that you would think it's impossible for that to ever happen again, but it always will happen again. It's just it's not normal.
Yeah, and I have to say this. I'm not really making fun of him, but I just I know some people have been critical of the NBC broadcast. I think Doc Emmerich's the best there is. I love listening to him during the Stanley Cup final, and their second level crew, which it's not. Is it Steve Albert or is it?
No, it's Kenny Albert.
Kenny Albert. I'm sorry, Kenny Albert. It's Kenny Albert with Milbury and Pierre Maguire.
Yeah.
I cannot remember which goal it was. I think it was the third. It was the third goal. I think it was the Bertuzzo goal.
Yeah.
That made it 3-2, the eventual game winner. And Albert makes the call and he says, he shoots, he scores. And the first reaction from Milbury in terms of insightful color commentary was, "Wow," and then didn't say anything after. I mean, Mike, you've been a broadcaster. You've been during games. You're in the studio. I know, and you've been doing color and doing commentary
before there was color TV.
and all this, if they had dropped him in just for a game and he said that would be one thing, but this is round 3. He did most of the Boston-Toronto series. I think he did mostly Carolina and the Islanders, or maybe he stuck with Boston in round 2, but he's been doing this for now 3 rounds. Wow, doesn't cut it, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, they're better off having Manny Moe and Jack at this point. Like, it's just it's awful. Like, sometimes you want to mute it. It's just it takes away. And Kenny does a good call, but he's great. He's got no backup. He has no backup there.
And Pierre is Pierre. I'm not trying to be hypercritical, but Pierre is A, an acquired taste, and B, if he annoys you, you just sort of have to grin and bear it because if you're watching the NBC broadcast, and I do because it's in high def and because I like Doc Emmerich.
Yeah, see, funny, Chris has a Blues logo up, so maybe he's out of St. Louis, and he said that they talked about it on the radio, like, wow, and then 15 seconds of silence.
Yeah, I was like, and please?
Yeah, it doesn't play well on television.
Yes, and by the way, we talked about this a couple days ago, and I've yet to read the piece completely. I just read the first couple paragraphs before we went on the air. Stephen Wino, who we both know, wrote a piece for AP about the origins of the song "Gloria," the Laura Branigan.
Yeah.
So now we know.
I don't really need to know the origins of that song.
No, I was just wondering why it was being used as their sort of like celebration song, because I thought it was because she was from St. Louis and she's from New York apparently, and it originated in some bar in Philadelphia Philadelphia. It's like,
no, I told you the story because someone in the chat room had it. I mean, it's weird that it originated in Philadelphia.
I'd like to know how the hell it got from Philadelphia to St. Louis. Did it come with the Braden Shen deal? Is that what happened? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, it would have been better if somebody was related to Laura Branigan and said, hey, Laura Branigan's passed, but we remember her with the song. Hey, great. I might be able to get behind that. Otherwise, I hate that song. No offense.
Hey, maybe somebody will pick up Kate Smith. Okay. Now, sorry. Now, game 3.
That's a heavy statue, Mike. I'm just saying.
I know. Game 3 of the Bruins Hurricanes series goes tonight in Raleigh. Rod Brind'Amour is doing a little, chicanery and sort of cloak and dagger with his goaltender decision. He says he's not going to reveal the goalie. Everybody seems to think it's going to be McElhinney, but
it isn't. He's going to be risking his job at some point. Like
please, I'm
over exaggerating, but
he got to the playoffs with that team, so I still think that's a bit miraculous. But but let's assume that it's McElhinney. What do you think the Canes have to do tonight to get on the board, so to speak, in this series?
Maybe they have to double shift the Aho line. Maybe the Aho line starts the game. You put them out there 20 seconds. You let the next line go out, and then you put the Aho line right back. You know what I mean? Maybe they have to do something drastic like that to sort of get it going their way. I think it's going to have to be something like that. They're not getting. Really, they're not getting a lot of push from the blue line point wise. So I can't. Because sometimes that fires up a team, right? When your defensemen score. So I think they're gonna have to look at Aho. I think at this point he's the leader of this team offensively, and he's gonna have to do it. I'll tell you. You know how the Carolina Hurricanes are in trouble when people are writing articles about how good a shape Rod Brind'Amour is still in.
No,
he's playing. Who cares?
What tells you that they're in trouble is when Curtis McElhinney, who I have a lot of respect for, he played very well.
Oh yeah, you were singing a different tune with old Mac when he was a Leaf a couple.
No, I was the one who wanted him back instead of the Civ known as Garrett Sparks this year. Please, no. But I'm saying as a backup goaltender, I have respect for him. But when he is being portrayed as the savior here, because Mrazek is too aggressive in net, like he's too out on the edge of the blue paint, and McElhinney is more of a passive goaltender who plays closer to the goal line. And this is paralysis by analysis, but it's also, it shows you that this team, we thought during the regular season, needed goaltending help. And I think still, even in spite of the fact, Mrazek didn't stand on his head against Washington.
One game, maybe.
Well, and the Islanders were just piss poor against the Hurricanes. So I didn't think there was a standout performance by either one of them against the Islanders. It's sort of coming home to roost now because both of at least Mrazek in the first 2 games has not played well.
No, it's true. The other thing that's troubling is, no matter what, Carolina's got to play a better defensive game, or it won't matter who's in net, because even Mrazek was facing too many point-blank shots. But Mrazek was overplaying, and he probably is injured, and he's compensating, and that's why we all think McElhinney should be in there. But I don't think Brind'Amour's fooling anybody by not telling anybody. At this point, there's very few bullets left in the chamber for him. Like this team, if they go down in this game, like they're down 2-0 in this game, that could be the series. We have to be realistic about it. Yeah,
if they lose this is not a really a dramatic statement. If they lose today and they're losing the series, they're down 2-0.
That's why I went a little sooner than that to make it at least a little less obvious. But they're not going to be a great comeback team against the Bruins. It's just not going to happen. They have too many guys that have been through it. They've had it happen to them. There's still guys on that team that happened to them when the Flyers did it. So it's not going to happen to them.
Now, I found this funny, and I wrote about this today because, obviously until the Marlies get playing against Charlotte and the Eastern Conference Final of the Calder Cup, there's not a ton of news Leaf-related, but I find it I find it amusing that everybody is pumping their chest and crowing about the fact that William Nylander is leading the World Championships in scoring with 8 points. And, I've seen the video clips and some of them were really nice. Have you looked at who they're playing? Yeah, they won a combined score of 17-1 against those noted hockey powers, Italy and Norway. Italy's about as good at hockey as they are at war. And
I think it's interesting because I look at it and I'm like, why all of a sudden are people drawing conclusions in the draft based on what happened this year in the regular season as to how people are playing there? Because for one, you're playing on a bigger ice surface.
Right.
William Nylander won't play on that ice surface again all next year. Not until the Leafs are out of the playoffs early again, and then he goes back.
And he's never played. He's playing left. He's playing left wing in this tournament. Russ.
Yeah, I mean it's all fluky. It's like
a position he's never played once in his life.
Right. Well, maybe on his new team he will. But you know what I mean? But it's like nothing is the same here. It's not the same ice. They're playing different players at different positions. You have coaches that are coaching guys in completely different ways. They're slapping lines together, and people are drawing conclusions like, oh, man, look at this. Have you seen this? I'm going to draw a conclusion from that. It's like you can't. Not from this. This is basically just a step above pickup hockey, and Europe loves it because they don't get the NHL all year, so they get to see stars. Those guys get to go out and drink all night, and everybody's happy.
And apparently the beer is very cheap in Slovakia.
Yeah, I heard it's really good.
Actually. Yeah. Darren Drager reported €3, which is like $4.50 for a tall thing of
a tall beer for $4.50. You can't even get that in Buffalo.
They're gonna yes, you can. It's called Jenny Cream Ale.
Jenny Cream Ale.
Yes, and it's like drinking water from Lake Erie, which is laced with dioxin. No, I just find it the point I made about this is like this is good news for the Leafs in one respect. We do know that there are an absolute ton of scouts and GMs over at the World Championships.
Not as many though.
Not as many this year, but there still are. And they do take the performance in the World Championships seriously as an indicator of a player's worth. Otherwise, there wouldn't be players that get signed after the World Championships.
No, that's true.
Nylander is, he had a bad season, 27 points in 54 games, which equals out to a little over 40 points for an 82 game schedule. He had a bad playoff. There's, his future in Toronto is in question. Let's just say it's good news that for the Leafs, in the sense that any concerns about him not being able to perform, are assuaged a little bit by him being able to perform at the World Championships, playing at a higher level, scoring points. It may, for some of those GMs who like, okay, I don't know if I want to go after this guy after he had a bad year. There was interest in him in December. There's going to be interest in him in the offseason. It's all a question of what the Leafs can get back for him if it's worthwhile. And if not, then they're not going to trade him. But I think that it opens up even more the possibility of other teams being interested, especially in a league that needs scorers, and the Leafs need to improve their defense. That might be where they go. It might not be. We don't know what they're going to do.
Typical guys that get signed is like, I think the Slovakian goalie's unsigned, and he looked pretty good. Like things like that, where you can get a guy to an ELC and put him in, the ECHL or AHL because you're short a goalie. Those kinds of things make sense. Sometimes you get a defenseman. I mean, you do get some players out of it, no question, but it's not even close to like, the Olympics where, like I said, Zuccarello got noticed and, you guys get signed literally right after the Olympics.
And from, just while it rains, it pours when it comes to injuries. Brandon Montour, who was playing for Team Canada, got hurt, lower body injury. There's no indication of the severity of it, but add that to Zach Bogosian and Lawrence Pilot, who was likely going to make the Sabres next year. He had reconstructive shoulder surgery, out 5 to 6 months. I mean, the Sabres are in deep trouble. They're in deep trouble even if everybody was back healthy. Now you have 2 and possibly 3 of their defensemen. I don't know how serious the injury is. Probably not serious with Montour, but there's no indication yet of what it is. But if it's long-term, they're in real trouble.
I mean, is this going to hurt them in the coaching market? Now that they have all these injuries, is a new coach going to want to walk into that? Like that's a whole other question too.
And that's the name that's been coming out over the last 48 hours. I know Pierre LeBrun has talked about it. Other people have talked about it. Is Ralph Kruger, the former Edmonton coach, who was in management with the Southampton team in the English Premier League, which, that's not exactly hockey, but, I guess he's well respected in many sports. He's leaving Southampton, and apparently, according to LeBrun, he has talked to the Sabres about the head coaching position. LeBrun said the Sabres have talked to 7 coaches.
Okay.
7. But it's May the 14th.
Maybe they spoke to McClellan twice.
Yeah. It's May the 14th. They still haven't hired anybody, and some of the guys on their list, McClellan signed with LA. They've talked to Tippett. Supposedly, Tippett is the leading contender for the Edmonton job. Right. So, some of the guys that they talked to, they didn't like Todd Richards, and apparently Jacques Martin is not a serious candidate. So, I don't know where they're going to go, and they've talked to Kruger before about a different position.
Oh, a pretty good coach. If you remember, years ago, I brought it up because when Neil Yakupov was still sort of struggling in the league, he got good results out of Yakupov and some of the other guys. If you look at the offensive numbers when Kruger was there, they were so much better than Dallas Eakins. Dallas Eakins, maybe this go around he'll be better, but it was a big improvement. So if nothing else, he probably can open up the offense for Buffalo, and maybe that's what they need because their defense still isn't going to be great.
Yeah, and he did a good job with Team Europe at the World Cup of Hockey, so have to take that into considerations. We'll take some questions in the chat, but Russ, you wanted to do a little bit of a thing on Cam York?
Cam York, yeah, it's interesting because he's a defenseman. He's not the biggest guy. I think he's 5'11". Plays for the NTDP. Really good skater. You would expect that. He's a top pairing defenseman for them, and I think he could be a top 4 in the NHL. He might have certain Jake Gardner qualities, but he's not a turnover machine. But he's sort of like that guy because he's better than a puck mover, but he's not going to be, a 65-point defenseman either in the NHL. It could be like a 45-point defenseman. Got a great shot. His defense has certainly been on display the last little bit when he was at the under-18s, so people really like that. He doesn't shy away from contact. He gets up the ice really fast. And look, he had to play the power play with Caulfield and Hughes, and he still piled up points and still made sure he wasn't the bad one in a bunch of amazing, because that one day, you'll look back at that power play. It'll be like the London Knights. The other day they were talking about them. And when I went to see the London Knights, they had, back in the day, they had Patrick Kane, they had the Gustafson brothers, and they had
Corey Perry, Dave Boland.
Oh, no, not Perry at that team anymore, but Sam Gagne.
Oh, yeah, okay. You mean, okay.
And that was a pro power play, man. That's and the same thing for the NTDP. The power play they used this year, it's a pro power play, and York was great on it. So I looked at him, and I think early in the year, he probably would have been top 20. Mm-hmm. And now, the latest rankings I have him for on sportsology.com is 13. But that's my first list, and there'll be at least 1 or 2 more. It's not going to be like 25 lists like ESPN do for football. I don't understand. They do one like every other day. Once you put up they do mock drafts. I do rankings. But once they put up like mock draft 11.0, it's time to stop, But I look at this guy, and he could sneak into the top 10 based on, because Bowen Byram's the number 1 defenseman, and I believe Soderstrom next, and then I have York as the next guy. And so if somebody really wants to get defense and doesn't want to go for one of the other wingers or centermen, and most likely be a centerman, Cam York could sneak in that pile. This is a record year for the NTDP. It is. I mean, when you see the top 15 picks, how many guys go from the NTDP, it'll be crazy. I have, I think, 7 guys ranked right now in the first round from there.
Yeah, and he's a kid from Southern California, which is unusual. Now, is he in relation to Mike York?
No.
Okay, I thought, possibly.
Trust me, I would have mentioned it if I did. I always liked Mike York. One day, I'll give you a quick story. This was kind of a shocker because you don't see this very often. He was a Ranger, got drafted by him, even made the All-Star game when they were really bad. And I was covering the Rangers pretty exclusively in those days until the travel just wore me down. And one day, I wake up and all of a sudden he's a Flyer. And and the Ranger fans were like, "How's Mike York on the Flyers now?" Like it was really interesting, and he wasn't there very long, but he was a good guy. He had his moment, a couple years.
And Pierre Maguire will like Cam York because he played for Shattuck St. Mary's.
Yeah, so he'll mention that.
He'll mention that. Let's take a few questions.
He'll mention Sidney Crosby. It'll just come in the conversation. I get it.
Yes, let's take a couple questions if we have any in the chat. Okay.
Let's see. Questions. I'm going to the very top. There might be only lousy questions. We'll see.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's lousy questions are still questions.
No, I'm not asking them. All right, let's see.
By the way, NBA draft lottery, do you care?
No.
I know that.
I'll tell you what's interesting about this is no draft lottery is fun to watch, right? I watch the NHL one because all that I do with prospects, I need to know. But at least the NHL one, that even the guys in the top 15 are going to mean something someday. Right. Sometimes the NBA draft, you get past like the top 5 or 6, and it starts getting sketchy.
There is an hilarious YouTube out there from the 2016 draft, and obviously the ending was great for the Leafs because they won the lottery and got Matthews. But they were showing, and it was Jeff Merrick, our mutual friend, Steve Dangle, and I think Luke Fox from Sportsnet. And basically what they were doing was they were showing the video, and they had them on like in a little window watching the lottery. And when Brian Burke comes on the air, and they I think Calgary got the 6th pick in that draft, the stone face of Burke, and they're laughing because Burke is so pissed off that they picked 6th.
Yeah.
It's just great theater, but okay.
Chris is letting us know that Bruce Bochy did the door last night, which is good. He's steeped in California baseball tradition. That's a good choice. And he's retiring this year.
That's why.
And he won a championship there recently.
So when is Ken Stabler coming?
He's dead. Sorry.
Sorry. Dave Casper, Jack Tatum just died too. There you go.
Yeah, he's dead too. All right. And this show may be dead in a minute. So far, I don't have any questions. Actually, I'll ask this question because you'll know the answer, Mike. Bill C. wrote, I forget if it was that episode, and this is Mork and Mindy, when they interview a guy who was convinced the players make that their victory song. I forget his name. So they're looking for a comedic actor in that. I don't remember. I
mean,
the guy was a jeweler or something. Yeah, I don't know. Mork and Mindy's pretty random.
Yeah.
All right. So here's a question from Lord. Do you think, and I'm going to say the correct name, Hackstall gets a job just being on the bench for Team Canada? I think at some point Dave Hackstall is going to get another job because Dave Hackstall made the playoffs. I mean, he made the playoffs with teams that weren't that great in a rebuilding situation. They made it too soon, and then things got turned upside down in Philly, and then all of a sudden, Dave Hackstall was out. And I get the reasons why it happened, but he's not a terrible coach.
No, I think the move for him, though, I don't know about going back to college. I would say the move for him is to go and be either an AHL coach or an NHL assistant. Yeah. And, get a job, stay relevant, stay out there, keep your name out there, and, maybe you get a job in a year or two.
Yeah. So Matt is asking, is Cam York like Gostisbehere light? No, I think he's right on par with Gostisbehere and maybe a little better defensively because I think at this point, I think he has developed a little bit more defensively than Gostisbehere. It took Gostisbehere quite a bit of time, and some would say still hasn't played defense.
While you're looking, a couple things that Drager mentioned this morning. One, because Kyle Turris is playing for Team Canada. There's a lot of speculation about Turris and him being moved by Nashville. Yeah. It's going to be a tough nut to crack. $6 million AAV. I think he's got 4 or 5 years left. I mean, it's going to probably have to be, for lack of a better term, a crap for crap deal where they trade somebody with salary for another guy with salary. Maybe a new thing, a new atmosphere helps Turris better. But he also mentioned PK Subban too, and I that it only makes sense because I think they're going to sign Yossi, and they would rather spend the money on a guy.
Yossi doesn't say I want 10 for 8. If he says that, they're not signing him.
Well, yeah, but right. I mean, let's just say say they get him because they got him on a bargain the last time. Say they get him for 8.5. Say they get him for the same 9 that Subban makes.
Yeah, then Subban.
Then they'll trade Subban.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so Robert asks, do I see the Flyers? Who do I see the Flyers taking at their draft spot if they don't move it? So at the spot that the Flyers are at right now,
which is what, 8?
No, they're at 11.
11. Sorry.
I would say, I know, because I'm trying to think team needs and otherwise. It's a good question because Cam York might be there, but I don't think they would take Cam York.
No, honestly, like I don't think they're going to draft a center, and I don't think they're going to draft a defenseman. I think they'd probably draft just a scoring winger type.
I mean, Kaliev, that's too soon to take him. A year ago, it wouldn't have been because he's a hell of a goal scorer, but I would not take him in that spot because there's other problems in his game. Skating's not great. Defense isn't great.
Would a guy like Lavoie, I know that he was ranked like in the
yeah, he'll be there, but I think it may be too soon to take him too because there's questions about just him giving it
his all
the whole game. Not from a lack of effort, but just a pace kind of play. So that's something, you know, I'm thinking if Zegras was there, certainly they would take him. But I don't know if Trevor Zegras will even be there now. They're in a weird spot. I'm going to go Matt Boldy or Bobby Brink, and both of those guys can be really good goal scorers. Bobby Brink's probably a better pure goal scorer, so I'm going to go with one of those two.
Okay, 1 or 2 more questions.
Okay, it's good that you're not wearing gray today, too, Mike. So they have nothing to do about.
Red baby, right here, maroon.
Philly 5-0. Which I'm not sure what that means, unless, yeah, I'm not sure what Philly 5-0 means. But what's going on with Josh Ho-Sang? Well, I think he's going to get traded at the draft. I think the Islanders gave him his look. I think Trotz didn't give him a fair look, but did it anyhow. And I thought he was okay for them, but it doesn't seem like it's a fit in the organization. And I think they could still get something for him if they're going to move up in the draft or do something like that.
It'll all depend on what coach gets hired, but a guy like Ho-Sang is a guy that a team like Edmonton should consider because he's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of offensive talent. Now, if you get a coach, you know, like a Tippett, I don't think that Tippett would sign off on a Ho-Sang because Ho-Sang is, you know, he's not exactly disciplined defensively. He's a wild card, but you know, if you're a team that needs, I mean, they need wingers badly. And, you know, I think they need scoring forwards other than McDavid and Draisaitl badly.
Yeah.
But that might be, you know, a team like that, a team like Arizona, that could give him a spot and just let him play.
Here's another great question. And this is, where does Chase Prisky go? Chase Prisky plays for Quinnipiac, and they went pretty far this year. He's a defenseman, but he's 23. And so I don't know who is going to sign him, but somebody should. Now, again, when you're getting a guy like that, you may not be signing him for the NHL. Sometimes it's organizational depth. You sign him for the AHL. If he does do well there, maybe he gets a call up and you could slot him in for some games. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who it is that would go for that, but, you know, maybe someone like Arizona. I mean, somebody like that who's not totally set on defense, but could use like a veteran in the minors. That's not a bad place, you know, to go. Mm-hmm. Let's see.
1 or 2 more, and then we're done.
Yeah. Okay. Chris wants to know, speaking of Cole Caulfield, is he DeBrincat 2.0 or better or worse? I mean, I think there's portions of his game that are better for sure. Yeah. It's going to be hard to say Cole Caulfield's going to score more than 40 goals in the NHL, but I think he's capable.
Yeah. I have to say, I saw a video, a YouTube video, basically just like highlights and snippets from the under 18 and from other, you know, NDTP games. And my God, the hands, the
release on a shot is so fast. I mean, you wouldn't really be able to block it very easy. I'm going to say he's not DeBrincat 2.0, and I'm going to say he could be slightly better, and I'm going to stick with that until we see, because I also think the league in a couple of years will be a little more wide open and faster, and then that would play into Caulfield. Plus, he'll get a little, he's got to build up his body for a few years. He can't play right now in the NHL anyhow.
Last question.
Matthew, all right, we'll let her go with Matt because this is a great Flyers question. And by great, I mean it's a horrible question. Would the Flyers trade 11 for Subban, and would Nashville do that deal?
No.
Why in the world would you want to trade your 11th overall pick for a guy who's going to help cap you out someday and will get you 40 points on the blue line?
Now, okay.
Is not getting you to the Stanley Cup.
How about this? And I don't think this is realistic, but I'll just say it because the salaries are fairly similar. And we've heard the talk of Voracek maybe being somebody that the Flyers would move. Would you do Voracek for Subban?
Yes, I would do Voracek for Subban. I think Nashville would listen to it.
Yeah,
because of Laviolette still being there. So I would consider it. Now, what would probably have to happen is somebody else would probably go in that deal because Voracek's contract outlives Subban's, I believe. And so based on that, they're going to have to make up the difference somewhere to even out the money.
Yeah, Subban's got 3 or 4 more years. I think Voracek's got like 5 or 6.
It's like 15 more years, something like that.
No, it's not.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I know the Subban's name's been out there, and I know I'm not sure if it was Bob McKenzie or I think it was Elliot Friedman who was saying that when Subban was traded originally from Montreal to Nashville, the team that was sort of in on it but didn't get the job done was Vancouver, and it's known that Vancouver is looking for defensive help, either in free agency, there's been Carlson rumors, or in terms of a trade. So, maybe they go that direction, but, we know Vancouver, I mean, they have Quinn Hughes, but, guys like they traded Gudbranson. Tanev's on the last year of his contract. I wouldn't doubt if they add a big contract like a Carlson or like a Subban that they probably trade Tanev and clear the $4 million for the last year of it. And there are probably a couple teams out there that would roll the dice on him because he's very injury prone, but he's a good defensive defenseman. So
yeah, I think there's a chance of that. Last question, because this one's a really good one. Goalie FP asks, could Cam York fall to Rangers at 20? Anything's possible. You pick a couple of guys off the board and anything is possible. But I don't think they would sit there waiting for Cam York because I think that's the odds are it won't happen.
Right. And the Rangers have 2 first-round picks. So.
Right. So if they really wanted York, they could get him.
They could get him at 2, but this is not the New York Giants taking Daniel Jones. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Way to go, Dave Gettleman. You make the Jets and the Bills management look great by comparison.
Yep.
We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.